Let's try that again. Hello everybody, it's Krisis with a K, and I'm here with the return of the pull list, but will I survive the experience? We have a lot of greetings to do here live from New Zealand. You don't have to adjust your screens. It is I, Krisis with a K. But, you know, before we do any introductions or any adjusting of the screen, I just want to give you a tease of what we're going to be doing today. Then we'll introduce and explain. Of course, a pull list is the list of comic books that you pick up from the shop or digitally on any given week, and then you read. And I used to have a show called The Pull List that I did every single week last year until I fell off due to various reasons, where I read every comic pretty much out every week. This is a little bit different, and let's talk about how. So this is the comic that brought me back to reading this week. It's called Vampyrates. It is a new #1 from Boom Studios, and it was suggested to me by Cool Angel, and I thought, hey, Fred Van Lent, a writer who I really like, pirates, a thing that I broadly enjoy, and vampires, hey, that might be a lot of fun. So I read Vampyrates, and this is what set me off on this journey. So I was expecting, like, how could you go wrong? Vampires on a boat, right? But it's under the sun, so maybe it's going to be hard for them to survive. Maybe there's going to be problems. I mean, like, are they getting on ships just so they can eat people? Are we going to see it from the perspective of the vampires? I was just excited all around. So the art was okay. It was super, super colorful. I really enjoyed it. But the thing is, it just was like dumping lore on lore on lore, which I know in issue 1 has to do. So everybody's a vampire. We're in some vampire version of the world. And there are pirates, but there's also like an eternal vampire empire that's sort of like the British Empire. And they've got a princess, but she's going to get married, and it's got to be to a vampire, but she's got a human lover. And it was just like things on things on things piled, and they have all of these rituals of marriage, and they're going to consummate it, but they're not going to consummate it, and then they're going to be together and not be together. And I kept waiting for a point in the story where it was going to be like, here's the thing to care about, because it was a lot of lore and it was a lot of like telling me things, and I was kind of waiting for it to be like, here's somebody to be sympathetic to. And it was clear that maybe this vampire princess queen or whoever was the person I was supposed to be sympathetic to, but she really just has no personality whatsoever. She's just like getting married because she has to get married. She's a human lover because she's supposed to have a human lover. And then just out of the blue, her sister, who seems like she's in more control, so why isn't she the ruler, finds out the sister has a human lover and then is like, you're banished. But shouldn't she have known she had a human lover already? Why did she wait until the wedding to banish her? I don't know. And so then she like goes in the sea and she tries to find a ship to be on, and then she winds up on a pirate ship. It didn't make any sense to me, and there was no like compelling reason to mash up vampires and pirates. So I was kind of bummed out a little bit by it. And so I had 14 health going into this round, thanks to bonus 2 health from Max. And I only gave this a 4 out of 10. And so for 4 out of 10, that's doing the thing where the slide looks weird. We'll fix that though. For 4 out of 10, that means I take 4 damage. 4 damage. So I originally had 14 health, and I only made it out of level 1, round 1 with 10 health, which is going to put me in a lot of danger as we continue pull list survivor mode. So now that you've gotten a little preview of what this insanity is going to consist of, let's do the standard introduction, okay? So welcome to this show. The idea I had was, I love reading all of my pull list. It's one of my favorite things to do. I love keeping up with everything happening in the comic book industry, but pull list is hard to keep up with. I usually read between 40 and 60 books a week. So I read almost all of Marvel, and almost all of DC, unless they do something specifically to piss me off, then I drop them. I try to at least try every new #1 from Image, unless it's an author I really know that I don't like. And I try to read every new #1 from all of the indies as well. Again, unless it's an author where I'm like, I know I'm not really attracted to that. But that is a ton of reading. If you think every one of those issues probably takes 7 minutes to read, and then probably another 2 minutes to save images for the show, and then another minute to write my notes, we're talking about 10 minutes per issue, and so then that's as many as 600 minutes just to do the reading and the notes. So that's 10 hours, and then I put it's a lot. And it got to be a lot last year, such that once I got behind, I could not catch up again. So I thought, well, as I was looking at Vampyrates, and it wasn't really what I wanted it to be, and there were other things on the list this week that I was like, I would like to read those too. I started thinking, is there a way to gamify this? And I love games. I love tabletop RPGs. I love real life RPGs, not LARPing, but kind of like gamifying the day, the chores, the outing, the sightseeing. And I love Dropout and their show Game Changer, which is a different game every time. You might see that that's influenced this channel a little bit because I come back with so many different things every Sunday stream. And so we're going to play Pull List Survivor Mode. This is a pilot. I don't know that this will be a regular Sunday show. It might just happen occasionally. It might happen every week if you love it. I wanted to do it live because I really am interested in your feedback and the things that you all have to say about it. There might be a way to play a home game version. I don't know. This just came to me in a flash, and I chatted to Max, who at this point should have like an executive producer credit on this show. I was like, oh no, Max, I had a really good idea on how to bring Pull List back. And I only gave myself about 42 to 72 hours to make it happen, which is why, if you're watching live, we're starting a little bit late this week. So let me do some hellos to the folks in the chat, and then we will get into the rest of the show. Logan Wayne, who's waiting, wondering if I was going to have a show today, and I am. The Artunism starting a pull list for the upcoming Chachu by Iman Vellani. I will absolutely be reading that. And Miles Morales, Spider-Man by Brian Hill. I think we had some other choices for that, but we'll get into it. And we'll add Adventures by Zdarsky and so many others. Let's see who else. Jamie C is here and very excited. Jean Remy is here. One Wheelchair X was wondering if there was going to be a show. No, I was still toiling in the background. Super Job, Return of the Mac. No Return of the Pull List, but similar. There's co-producer Max. Edwin Billiot. Hello to you. Another Sunday or Monday, and it sounds like a fun live stream. Well, we'll see. It's a complete experiment. I have no idea. It might crash and burn, much like all of my live streams. So that's part of the fun. Wiccan Solar's here, who, fun fact, I believe out of all of you watching, at this time anyway, Wiccan Solar is the only viewer I've ever met in person. And that is because this particular crusher, turns out, lives about 5 minutes from my house. And so I dropped off my extra Harbinger book, and I got to meet a viewer. So that was so cool, and hopefully he really enjoys the Harbinger bucks. Xbox by Degree saying I could show up with hair without hair and makeup, but then it wouldn't be Krisis. There are some standards we have to maintain. Xbox by Degrees. The Pull List. I'm shooketh. I'm gasp, says Johnny Pauls. And Wiccan Solar hasn't even been around enough to know what the Pull List is, but you know what? I think that the Pull List is part of the lore of this channel, because this used to be the primary Sunday show. All this data stuff that I've been doing, that's an invention this year. Everybody used to show up to do the Pull List. David M. Wiz is here. Yes, for the return of the Pull List. Cool Angel, I would just like to point out this is all your fault. Super Panda is here saying, oh, Pull List, Omni Dog's Vault breaking news. I didn't know Omni Dog's Vault had enough breaking news that he had a whole extra breaking news channel. Let's see, Alan Aruba here is saying he hopes everyone is well. James Abert, or Abel, I don't know why I called you Abert, with the eyes that follow and watch the entire world. He's like the cerebro of the comic-loving internet. North Lake Ghost is back. I'm so happy to have you back. I was so happy to have you as a new viewer last time. Lance the Library here, who I'm happy whenever I see. Goody, 3451, do my errands, eat a quick dinner, and then it's time for the Krisis stream, which tells me you're probably in Europe. Cool Angel, I did get to Vampyrates, but as you've seen, I don't really feel too strongly about it. Batmanthu, who had an influence on the show, which will be evident as we go on. Tiago is here. Connor is really enjoying the Firestorm miniseries. That is one we will be talking about today. Connor saying Deathstroke is my personal fave of these new ones. Body by Leafield is here. Let me give you some Leafield Buddy. There you go. Putting Tame is not into singles, so I'm going to duck out, but I may check out the after party. Have fun. By the way, if you want to watch the after party and talk about things other than the frankly insane topic of the show, you absolutely can. The link is in the description below. If you don't see it, you probably need to reload, and that is only live while the show is live. Getting hot like Papa John variant is here, and Ellis Daria have been feeling extra great since 2 a.m. today. No idea why. Sometimes we just have a good day. And kia ora to New Zealand Hawkster. Patrick is here. Dr. Zero. And so many others. Sonus Occulti. I only picked up one comic last week, 100 Bullets, Us of Anger. But I will be at SDCC next week and going to buy lots of Ed Brubaker and Azarella, and also That Texas Blood. Okay, and Elon, hello my friend, is doing some math. And Alan, yes, I did say I used to read 40 to 60 books per week, but I don't think that's sustainable. So that is not the goal that we are trying to achieve anymore. Okay, I think I said hello to all the unique human beings. So, and I'm going to reshare from a different source because I was not a fan of how that looked shared directly from... Why can't I share an entire screen? Where's my other screen? Oh, there we go. Okay. So the idea was this. What if I wanted to read all of my pull list, but what if it was gamified a little bit? Because the problem is my average rating, you know, I track so much of my data so carefully. My average rating last year was only like a 2.9. And so that's fine, but it means for as many great books as there are in that 2.9 pulling it upwards, there's enough dragging it down below 3. It means I'm reading a lot of 0.5 and 1 and 2. I've rated on a 5-point scale usually, but I won't today, and you'll see why. And so I was like, how do I incent myself to read the good stuff first? When I had the 60 book pull list, I would like intentionally leave good books until later because I'd be like, oh, I've got to survive somehow. I can't put all the crappy stuff last because then I'm never going to want to get to it. So I was like, what if there was a reason to put the good stuff first and there was a reason to keep reading the crappy stuff? So that was kind of, because I read Vampyrates and I just didn't like it. So no shame to Cruel Angel. It just was not what I was looking for. And we know I really like a weird horror premise. You will see a few times in this, I picked a weird horror premise, hoping it would be good. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. So I had this idea of like, what if it was like a video game? What if I had health and I was incented to pick books that were good so that I didn't lose all my health and I could keep reading as much of my pull list as possible, reading only the good books. But then I thought, well, that's too easy because I can just, you know, I could just put my 10 favorite books at the top. They're probably all going to be good. What's the challenge? It didn't feel like there was much challenge there. So that is where the rules of Pull List Survivor were born. And let me just, this never quite is the right size. So let me see if I can make it work. It's got to be a little bit bigger. There we go. Okay, save. Update. Okay, cool. So here is Pull List Survivor rules. There are a lot of rules. Here are the rules. Each round consists of 5 issues. Each round, which I think I wound up calling levels. This is still a beta test. And then each round or level has 1 or more standard rules, which you'll see in a moment. And then each round also has bonus rules, things that will change every week. They'll be selected randomly by viewers. I reached out to a few viewers ahead of this to select them for me, and those bonus rules might supersede the standard rules. So in each round, I can pick any issues for my pull list I want, and I can read them in any order I want, as long as the ones that I pick obey the rules. And I'll rate each issue on a scale of 1 to 10, just because it's easier than dealing with half stars in the images. It's still, personally, from moi, I'm still rating on a 5-point scale, but we're going to rate for 1 to 10. And I start each round with an amount of new health, and remaining health carries over. I'm looking to read books that are 8 out of 10 or better. That's the good comics. And in fact, even a 7 out of 10, not so bad. So for every one I rate below an 8, I lose a health. And for every one I rate above an 8, I gain a health. In fact, if I rate something a 10, I get 2 health, right? And then I can only continue if I have health remaining, like any good video game character. The idea for this for me is not only that I can have a fun way to do pull lists, but I feel like pull lists didn't involve everybody a whole lot. And if you like this, because this will only happen again if you're enjoying it and you have feedback that is positive, in the future, maybe you're playing a version, maybe you give me extra rules of your own devising, maybe you make me read a certain issue, I just don't know. The thing that would be really cool is if we could do it live, but I can't read the issues live, and I could pre-record as I'm reading them live and like hit pause and then respond, but then we wouldn't get the interaction. So we're just going to experiment. So here we are at level 1. I tried to give myself like a pixelated portrait. I was thinking about Final Fantasy. If we keep doing this, I am totally willing to commission custom pixel art of me to make this fantasy a reality. So level 1 starts with 12 health. And the standard rule for level 1 is very simple. I have to read a Marvel book, a DC book, an Image book, and then 2 different other publishers. So I need 5 unique publishers in this round. And my Max, totally randomly, I swear this was totally by chance, he picked a random number, and that random number gave me 2 bonus health. So actually, I have 14 health, which means I can afford to read all 5 of these books. Could be 6 out of 10. I'll take 2 damage for each book, and I'll still have 4 health left over. So that seemed like a really good deal. So before we dive in, let me just see what your comments have been. Oh, is my Bluetooth is not turned on, so none of my stuff is working. Maybe that's a good thing. Okay, let's see. I would take another Lucador mask show from Krisis from time to time if the hair and makeup does not feel like working. That almost happened today, but because this was like the first... Oh, you know what? That's true. Batmantha has also met me. I did not mean to shade Batmantha. I don't think of Batmantha primarily as a viewer, because I think before I ever saw her regularly in the comments here, I knew her as a viewer of her on Omnidog. So and then we were both on Omnidog. So like for Batmantha, I had like done stuff on screen with her before we had ever met each other in Auckland. So sorry, I did not mean to cloud or in any way lessen. I consider Batmantha a personal friend. She's actually met Krisis, who usually does not make a physical appearance at all on the channel. Northlake Ghost saying my favorite poll now is a sweet queer mystery from Ignition called The Other Half. So this is actually worth pointing out. I really wanted to include Ignition in this because they had a lot of really cool books out, and I could not find them digitally. Turns out they're only sold digitally on Sweet app, and I was still, or it's called Sweet Shop app, and I was still in the waiting list. So I reached out to them on Blue Sky, and like 20 minutes later, they're like, you're off the list. I didn't realize it was like a phone app, and I don't do any of this on phone. I'm like in my jet engine headquarters with all of my laptop and all of my equipment. So I couldn't take advantage of that for this week, but I know that they do sell DRM-free copies. So I think for next time I do this, if there's a next time, I should be able to get Ignition digital books by buying them on Sweet Shop. And I would encourage you all to sign up on Sweet Shop's waitlist now. They're moving people in off the waitlist all the time. It's an app. It works on iPad. It works on iPhone. It works on Android. It just does not work on a Mac processor Mac, even though most apps do, but maybe I'll talk to them about that. But yeah, if you want to read Ignition press books, you can get them all digitally on Sweet Shop app. Okay. So, the only book I read this week is Uncanny X-Men 31. I'm so sorry, One Wheelchair X. So, and by 5, if I win Immunity Challenge, you're safe from being voted off the island. I mean, those books, I pull are all 8 or 10 or better. Well, here's the thing. If you have been watching for a while, folks know that I grade very much in a bell curve. I don't force it. That's just my natural distribution of ratings. I'm like that listening to music too. I just naturally do. So I do not rate a lot of things 4s. My most common rating is like a 2.5 or a 3, thus my average of 2.9. So again, if I put things in a good order and I don't punish myself with books that I'm going to hate, I should be able to read tons and tons of books. But I don't give a lot of 4s. I rarely give 4.5s, and I never give 5s, or I'm talking about a 5-point scale because that's how I usually rate. So I really don't have a lot there. Greendale Forever saying, hi, just a quick suggestion, but maybe a live stream where I take different formats and using all of my data to determine if they're most likely to reprint a certain book. Certainly something we can talk about on the after show if you have some new ideas. And when it comes to new comics, I only buy digital. I don't want anything that's just coming out physically, not even an OGN by a creator I really, really like. I make very rare exceptions if it's like an OGN that has no digital version. But pull list usually is my filter. So when I'm not doing pull list, I really have no idea what's going on. Okay, so you've already, let me turn on Bluetooth so I can use my damn keyboard. And also let's turn off the internet. There might be a quick hiccup, but then everything should be fine. Okay, so we've already seen that Vampyrates was a book that I did not really love. So we already talked about it. I did like the kind of angular art. I think it's very typical. It's not super angular, but I just think these faces with these shadows is really, really typical for a vampire book. It's exactly what I expected. But it just didn't, like I said, I didn't really feel any connection to the story at all. Like it just didn't really seem like it was going anywhere. And Van Lent is usually such a good one for me. So it was written by Fred Van Lent, illustrated by Luca Pizzari, colored by Adam Guzowski, and lettered by Jody Trotman. I will say, and this is not just because Jody Trotman is a friend of mine in Blue Sky, I did think the lettering was really good, and it was really easy for me to read. But let's continue. So I have to pick a Marvel book this round, and I looked at the Marvel polls this week, and it was not looking good for me. So I went with the new Daredevil. Now, I had not read this at all. This is Stephanie Phillips's Daredevil, and it is brand new to me, so I did catch up. I don't always catch up on a book, but it was only 4 issues, so I decided that I had time and I would catch up. And the credits on this one is Stephanie Phillips as the writer, Lee Garbett as the artist, who I love, Frank Martin colors, and Ariana Maher doing letters. So the thing is, in this Daredevil run, Daredevil is kind of like back at it. He's teaching at a college, but there's really like no big overarching thing happening to him yet as we start. And then as he's kind of just living this new life and doing his thing, he encounters this villain who he's calling Omen, who like somehow confuses his senses. It's actually really unclear how. Does he not make noise? Does he make too many noises? I feel like we've seen this villain 100 times in Daredevil before. So it's kind of like, and he's like, then he just revealed himself at the end of the last issue. He's got this like emaciated face. He kind of looks like Morbius. It just doesn't feel that fresh to me at all. But I will say Lee Garbutt's art is incredible for this. I was a little concerned, because Lee Garbutt's art I associate with characters with like big hair and kind of like very interesting body shapes and like a mix of masculine and feminine looks, because I think that that's what Lee Garbutt is really good at, being good at Loki, Skyward, a lot of books I really, really loved. I just thought, like, will Daredevil in the suit be satisfying over and over again? But I found that it really was, and I think that Frank Martin's colors are really great here. The thing I really, and there were some really cool moments, I think this is very Frank Miller to kind of show a character that's totally silhouetted out in the foreground with blackness, but then we can see the whole rest of their figure. That's a Frank Miller trope. I love that the owl comes to his rescue. I love when we take old villains and we make them relevant again, but ultimately it just kind of feels like all that happened this issue was like, there's this villain that Daredevil can't really hear or see, which is like the most basic ass way to do a villain for him. Oh, and he's taking people's eyes. Like, how on the nose can that be for Daredevil? I feel like Muse and Charles Soule's run kind of did that already. And so Daredevil is struggling. And like, that's the whole issue. So for me, this is the problem with a lot of Stephanie Phillips comics. Actually, I think on a technical level, it's written really well. I think she has the Daredevil voice down really, but the story is just not interesting. Like, it's fine. It's okay. And Lee Garbutt's art is super, super, super carrying, but I just don't feel like this is up to the standard of a Daredevil comic. I liked it, and I'm still hanging in there, but I've seen Stephanie Phillips crash out on every book she's ever written after like the 7th or 8th issue, even her indie stuff, which I really liked. She's like a one arc and done kind of writer. So I came into this with 10 health. I gave it a 6 out of 10, which was 2 below an 8, so I took 2 damage, and I had a remaining health of 8, but that is the only thing I could do. It was the best Marvel book I could pick. Hatching is when things are kind of like cross-hatched and you can see the hatching on it, which maybe some of that was done at the end. Like, this is hatching, but this is kind of just like a black. It's probably in the art. It's got all the X's on it for the colorist to just do it a flat back. So I don't know if I would call it hatching. Didn't Stephanie write that Phoenix book I hated? Yes, indeed, she wrote that Phoenix book. All right, so then my 3rd issue of level 1 was 7 Wives. Now again, I had to pick 2 publishers other than Marvel DC Image. So this is an IDW book, and this is written by Zoe Tunnell, somebody who I really, really enjoy. She writes Blade Maidens, which is a webcomic that I really like. She was part of the extended family of Comics XF, and I always try to show up to support people who kind of were comics writers and critics and who are now writing a book. So I read the 1st issue of this to catch up. It's a book about, I forget if it's like Mormon Latter-day Saints or if it's one of those Christian-based religions that they think they can have multiple wives, and they're very possessive of the wives. And the husband, who had 7 wives, per the title, was murdered, and we're wondering which of the wives it might be. I love the cover. I love that it's a crime book. It didn't really give like any hint of being spooky or anything, and so I thought, like, okay, that might be cool. So I read the 1st issue in this issue, and part of the problem is we're really investigating which of the wives killed him, but it seems very obvious from the start. He's just a bad guy, and probably multiple of the wives killed them. And so it's one of those things where like the interesting part is really going to be the motive and not the killer. And so we're kind of going around and interviewing all of the wives and looking at their motives. The thing is, he's made out to be such a one-dimensional asshole that like all of the wives should have killed him. Like, it doesn't... It's like, okay, he's dead, and the police detective, had been a part of this community, so she's like, the women are really mistreated, which is true, but it's just, I got to the end of the 1st issue, and there was a little bit of intrigue, but I was like, well, why do I care that he died? Like, he died, and I hope all the wives killed him. And the other problem with this is what I would call froggy art. Everybody has these, like, bulging eyes and these, like, weird amphibian mouths. And they, like, it just is unattractive. And so basically we're going from unattractive setup to unattractive setup to meet each of the wives, all who have a pretty horrible story to tell. And even when they tell a nice story, then it like shows them being abused. And then like, but who killed him? Like, I deeply don't care. I would have dropped this after the 1st issue, but I wanted to give it 2 issues a chance, and I wanted an IDW book for it, but I absolutely hated this. I don't see any point in reading it. I'm so sorry, Zoe Tunnell. I don't think she likes me, actually, to begin with, from the olden Twitter days, but unfortunately this one did not score with me. So I started out with 8 health. This, unfortunately, was only a 3-star book for me, and so I take 5 damage, which means I am down to 3 health. Are we even going to make it off of Level 1. Okay. Well, I want to highlight something for Edwin. So for me, the fun of first, Goody saying, I don't know anybody who is pulling this. And Edwin saying, the pull list always has books I've never heard of. For me, the fun of pull list is we all know what books we know. Like, it would be so easy to just pull X-Men or just pull Batman. And no shame to you if you do. You like what you like, and you're not trying to torture yourself with new comic books like I sometimes do. But for me, it's a way for me to, like, know what's coming out in the industry. It's how I find up and coming writers as they're up and coming, cool artists. It's how I see new publishers that break out. And sometimes it turns out my favorite stuff is the stuff that I just pick randomly out of the blue. And then when I stick with my Marvel and DC stuff, it's kind of just like all like 2.5s and 3s, and nothing spikes, nothing excites me. So I just use League of Comic Geeks. It's a free site. Anybody can use it. I go to the new comics. I filter out variant covers. I filter out the publishers I know I won't read, like a lot of the manga publishers who are just not for me. And then I just go through the whole list, and anything that looks cool, it goes onto my pull list. That's really it. That's what I do. That's my process. So now we come to book 4, and I only have 3 health left. So this was I was saving DC because DC had a couple books that I was really interested in this week. So I was like, oh, DC might be able to save my butt here. So I was like, oh, there's a couple decent choices. I usually like Mariko Tamaki okay. I assumed that this would maybe get me to a 3.5 out of 5. And the thing is, I hadn't read it yet. So first I read the first 2 issues. The first issue of this is like a 5 out of 5. It's brilliant. The art is incredible. I loved it so much. Absolutely stellar. By the way, I did not give you the credits for Seven Wives, and even if I don't like it, I do want to credit everybody. The script was Zoe Tunnell. The art was Teslin Burgeon Decoy. The colors were Antonio Del Hoyo, and the letters were Brian Kolek. Okay, but here we are on another book, Barbara Gordon Breakout. The credits on this one are, oh gosh, they're very small. The writer is Mariko Tamaki. The art is M.A.K. Nelpan. The colors are Tamara Bonvillain, and the letters are Ariana Maher. So the whole concept of this is there's some crimes that have been occurring. I don't know if they've been teased in other Bat books or not. I'm not up to date on my Bat books. But as a result, good people, especially like prosecutors, criminal DAs for the city, police sergeants, they're all being arrested by this government or actually the police force, not the government, but the police force that is ruled by Vandal Savage, and being put in jail, and they're dying in jail. And so Babs is like, you know what? Nobody knows that I'm Batgirl. I have perfect cover. Everybody already hates me because I'm Gordon's daughter. I'm going to go to jail and try to figure this out from the inside. It starts out with a first issue that is so incredible. I highly recommend it to everybody. However, something that happens at the first issue, and you should all know there's spoilers in Pull List. Something that happens at the end of the first issue is Barbara Gordon gets attacked and really hurt. And the thing is that I liked about the first issue is that Barbara Gordon was super active, because it's not that I don't like her as somebody who has a disability. It's just that if you're going to put her as the star of her own comic book and you're going to do it as an exploitation prison book, then I think it's really fun to see her beating the crap out of everybody, even if she has to balance that with like, okay, I have to make sure not to re-injure myself. Nobody's going to help me here in prison. But she basically just gets beaten the crap out of her by somebody off screen between issues 1 and 2. And so now she's like super damaged, and she's like hallucinating. This art is incredible. But because she's like hallucinating, she's flashing back. So we like invent this whole old story with her and Nightwing, which has a clue that maybe relates to the current thing, and somebody in the prison is drugging her, so she's hallucinating things. Nothing happens, Mariko Tamaki. And again, certain writers, and this is not, don't think it's just me with femme and women writers, because we're going to talk about some men I have a problem with this too. They just have certain things that they return to time and again, and the thing doesn't work. And I think this Mariko Tamaki thing is, we just got 2 issues of a 6-issue miniseries where we took our main character, who was being really cool, basically off the table, took away all of her agency, and just have her hallucinating things. What is the point of reading this comic then? Just give me a fucking recap at the end. It's such a good concept, and it's such good art, and I just don't understand. Yeah, it's not issue 13, it's issue 3. I don't understand. I just don't understand why you would do this. I don't here. And the great thing about this is I can actually fix things when we do it in this format. Okay. I just don't understand why you would do that. And so we have this really great premise, and I just keep saying the same thing over and over again because I'm just totally stymied about how you could have an art team this good, a premise that cooks this good. And it's not that I'm saying that I don't want to ever see Barbara Gordon at risk. It's not saying that I don't think that it's fun if she has a potential flaw. I'm saying that it took away the interesting thing about this. So I only started with 3 health. I did give this a 3 or a 6 out of 10. Not to preserve myself, I promise, but because I felt like the art was still good. I still am interested in the story. I want to know who's killing all the people in the prison, but and nothing about it was written badly. But I just think that this should be a 5 out of 5 comic book, and issue was, and they're wasting my time at this point. So I took 2 damage, and I only have 1 remaining health. Okay. So I hadn't picked Image yet. I looked at all the Image books, and here's the thing. I have a little bit of a handicap for myself this week, which is I know I'm really enjoying The Forged by Greg Rucka and Eric Trotman, but each issue is a triple length issue, and I'm only on issue 5. Issue 12 came out this week. So I knew I could have skipped ahead in The Forged, and I probably would give it a 3.5 or 4, I'm sorry, a 7 or an 8. But I was like, I just don't want to rush it just for pull list. So I looked through the rest of my list. This is M.A.S.K, Mobile Armored Strike Command. It's the 2nd issue. It's written by Dan Watters. It's part of the Energon universe. And I thought, well, Energon universe doesn't super suck, but I can't, if I give it a 3.5, I'm out. And there was no other Image book that I felt like I was gonna for sure be a 4 out of 5 other than The Forged. So I just went into this hoping. It's written by Dan Watters. It's art by Pi Parr. It is colors by Pierluigi Casolino and letters by Russ Wooten, who I think letters all of the Energon line. So I, with trepidation, read the 1st issue, and it was a home run. I was in love with it. Pi Parr's art is incredible. It looks big and hefty and rubbery as a toy comic should. I loved M.A.S.K. I had all of these toys, but they were a different form factor than G.I. Joes. So in mine, I would have loved to play with them, my G.I. Joes. This connects them in with the G.I. Joes. The 1st issue was great. So I was like, okay, I might be saved. This may have worked. So then I read issue 2. In issue 1, we met the main good guy and the main villain. Here in issue 2, we meet 2 of the other masked good guys. Basically, M.A.S.K, the idea is that they all have these helmets that kind of pop right over their head and give them special telemetry, sort of like Star-Lord's helmet in the MCU. And they all have these really cool vehicles. The vehicles are not quite Transformers, but they're not quite just normal vehicles. They're kind of somewhere in the middle, and they do cool stuff. And so we meet these 2 people that he's already established contact with, and he sends them on a mission to retrieve this MacGuffin that is maybe creating a miniature black hole right on Earth that maybe is related to Transformers, technology. So they go on the mission, they drive a car off the cliff, the car, flies through the air, it goes underwater, it turns into a submarine car. So cool. And we have this cool submarine battle between M.A.S.K and the bad guys, which I think are called Venom, and it ends up with these 2 characters kind of fully formed. We see that they're both really capable, but they both have some flaws, and they've had a really cool adventure. I would say that the one detraction on this for me is that it felt like the MacGuffin of this black hole thing was such a big deal the way that it was set up in the 1st issue, and then it kind of just gets burnt right off in this issue, and we didn't really break away from their action at all, which I think is important. I think after the introductory 1st issue had a lot of backstory, but it also had a lot of interesting character work. So this issue, I think it was the right choice for Dan Watters to just do a full out action issue. There's really no subplot going on whatsoever, and I'm okay with that. So I really enjoyed it. I don't think you have to know what M.A.S.K was from your childhood or from TV. It was pretty obscure both as a TV show and as toys. I think you could just pick this up and it stands alone in the Energon universe. I would say it's really a nice midway point between Transformers and G.I. Joe, and so far, just 2 issues, I think this is way better than any issue of G.I. Joe. The people do look a little bit odd, Goody. I think that they've got a little bit of that frogginess to them, but I like that he differentiates. I like that he differentiates the faces. I don't think that everybody has the same look. They all have kind of big eyes and a little bit of a wide face, but they have different looks to them, and I do like how cartoony it is. I do also like when people who are doing books that are based on toys and cartoons give the characters a really thick outer line, because that really makes me feel like I could reach in and pick them up. DC did do M.A.S.K back in the 80s. That's right. Maybe we'll see a M.A.S.K Kickstarter for M.A.S.K old comic books, but I don't think it has the nostalgia level of G.I. Joe or Transformers. So what did I give it? Truly, honestly, with no saving my butt, I gave this an 8 out of 10. I loved it. I really like the art. I'm super hooked. I would read more of it right now. It's actually re-interesting me in the Energon universe. So I came into this with 1 health, and I took no damage because this was an 8 out of 10, which means I make it out of level 1 by the skin of my teeth with 1 health. And let me tell you, if I had 0 health, the show would be over. You can only go to another round if you have health remaining. So that was the 5 books in round 1. Goody saying, totally fair. That's what I gave it too. Superjob saying Miles Mayhem is the best bad guy name ever. So, by the way, if you have suggestions of how this could go a little differently or better, because I would like to bring it back if you all like it. Should I say what the 5 books are up front? Should I show my whole pull list up front? Tell me, because I was slamming this together literally 30 minutes before I got into the hair and makeup chair, because this was, as I said, really, really late breaking. Okay, now let's go to level 2. So level 2, the first level I started with 12 fresh health. This time only 10. It decreases on every level, so things get a little harder every time. Also, level 2 is 2 standard rules. I still have to do a Marvel, a DC, an Image, and 2 other publishers. But so I can't just binge all stuff that I love. And I have to include at least 1 new number 1. Now, I usually do that anyway, but number 1s represent risk because you don't know if you're going to truly like them. They might be from a team you already like, but you don't know if you like the comic book already. So I thought that it would make it a little harder to have a number 1. And on the near mint condition Discord, Idle Weidler picked a random number, and that random number corresponded to the rule of must include 2 DC books. So that supersedes the regular rule, which means I could avoid 1 other publisher. It might work in my favor because DC is pretty great right now. So I'm going into this round with 10 health from this round and 1 from the remaining health, or from the previous round, for 11 health. Patrick asking if the Energon universe any good? And I think Goody nails it. It reads much better collected because it's very decompressed. It's very like short, quick issues. It's very kind of like big flashy moments. And I think that it just reads way, way better in big chunks. Single issues I find rather unsatisfactory until that M.A.S.K issue. Okay, so here we go. This is a risk, because I had not read this series yet, is The Fury of Firestorm by Jeff Lemire. And we know, longtime viewers of this channel know, I hate Jeff Lemire, but I'm obsessed with Firestorm lately, and I just thought maybe it could work. And I started out with a lot of health, so I'd rather like take a chance on something earlier in the round and know that I took the health hit, and then pad myself out later in the round. So this is written by Jeff Lemire, art by Rafael de la Torre, colors by Marcelo Mayo, not my favorite colorist, and letters by Lucas Gattoni. So I was a little bit nervous headed into this book. Now, Lemire, I caught up to all 4 of these issues. The first issue, fantastic. All of the first issues, for the most part, of Next Level that I've read so far have been really, really well. Great editing, great concepts. The idea is that Firestorm usually has multiple people merged into his personality, and right now there's only 1 driving, and maybe there's something within Firestorm that needs 2 personalities to drive that power. So Shades of the Century, Shades of Dr. Manhattan, he really is a Dr. Manhattan analog. He's not just about fire. He's a nuclear man, and he can basically do anything he wants chemically. And so even though Dr. Manhattan was based on Captain Atom, I feel like Firestorm, at least the way Lemire is doing it here, because I have very little experience with Firestorm, is absolutely being written as the Dr. Manhattan in a really sinister way. But part of the issue with that is he's not really the main character of his own comic book. It's a comic book of everybody reacting to him, which is a little bit of a bummer for me because I wanted to read a Firestorm comic book, and he's kind of just this inhuman villain here because he's out of control. But I did really like the first issue. Then the next 2 issues were all Jeff Lemire just retelling Firestorm's origin, which is good because I don't know it, so that was useful to me. But again, I get really frustrated when a book is like not progressing in the current day and there's no perspective character for me to respond to unless it's like really an ensemble book. So by the time I was done issue 3, I was nervous about this because I hated issue 3. So then we got to this issue. Here's the thing that this issue did that I really, really liked, and I don't know my pre-Crisis DC lore or even pre-Flashpoint DC lore well enough to know that this is real. As we were talking to the original creator of Firestorm, who's one of the 2 people who used to occupy Firestorm, but he's been kicked out, he's saying that he was part of a Superman project, and in this Superman project, he was with the founders of the inventor of Metamorpho, the founder of Doom Patrol, and the founder of, I believe, the Metal Men, and they were all trying to make man-made superheroes to compete with Superman. Those of you who are like big DC fans, is this a thing? Like, did Lemire just invent this, or has this always been a thing? I'll pause in my critique to say, Dr. Philo, first time live watching and likes this format. Thank you for the positive feedback, and how am I? Welcome to watching for the first time. So the reason I wound up like getting engaged with this issue is because we are following an actual perspective character, which is another character who has Firestorm-esque powers, who used to be Firestorm's partner and lover, who's now one of the only people that the US government is going to say, like, could you go and do something about Firestorm? Everybody else is just going to get exploded. And she finds out maybe she's a part of this project as well. So there's kind of like a Weapon X aspect to it. Superjob, such a good point that I totally forgotten. Superjob is saying, I think a lot of this is based on Doomsday Clock. So see, Doomsday Clock does have an impact on DC. And so it's kind of this interesting dissection where he like is a Dr. Manhattan. He's kind of stuck his own personality. She's now realizing that she's a part of this story too. And we have this page where like we go in tight on their kiss, which we saw in the cover and we saw earlier in the issue, and it gets deconstructed and deconstructed. The veil is lifted. And it's not just my life that's a lie or Ronnie's. It's our entire relationship that begins to look different to me. What I thought was pure becomes artificial, ugly. What makes two molecules attract? Lies. And I love the push in on the zip dots, closer to the zip dots, and then they're two zip dots, and then they're like two molecules with a connection. This was a very well-structured issue. I don't know that we needed to issue a recap to get here, but I liked it. So I gave it a 7 out of 10. Not as good as the first issue, way better than the previous 2 issues for me. So I only took 1 damage. I started with 11, so I still had 10, and I was ready to go. Okay, let's continue to my second pick. So I had to do 2 DC in this round. And that one went pretty well. And so I was like, okay, well, I can still afford to have a book that's a riskier book at the top of the round. So I picked this. I thought this was a one-shot. It's actually a new miniseries. It's Clayface Celebrity Dirt. And I was a little bit nervous about this because I have been big hit and big miss with this writer before, Jude Ellison S. Doyle. Sometimes I really like their stuff. Sometimes I really don't. So big risk. Fran Galan is the artist. Patricio Del Pesce is the colors, and Tom Napolitano is the letters. Now, I will say, I really like Clayface, and I loved Clayface in James Tynion's Detective Comics. So I'm starting this with like a hope that it's going to be something that I really appreciate. It's not a movie tie-in. It's that it is Clayface and it's horrific, but it's not specifically about the movie. So I dug in. The first thing I immediately loved. You gotta get, if an issue gets me on its side quickly, I'm totally into it. Clayface is in prison, and to keep him in prison, they have him in this giant box, and they're heating the box from below so he can't form his clay. And the visuals of him in the box, it's kind of like MODOK-y, it's kind of Kang from Ninja Turtles. I just love it. Immediately, I'm like charmed. I think this was like the first page, or like maybe it was the third page. There was like a brief interlude at the beginning. I was immediately on its side. And the thing is, it also establishes that Clayface is an unreliable narrator. Is this the main Clayface, or is this some other? Because as the comic points out, there's 8. So he's some Clayface that's been caught, but is he the Clayface? And maybe we know from other Batman comics, but I haven't been keeping up with Batman comics, so I don't know. And so I immediately was like, oh, interesting. He's a malleable character, and his personality is malleable, and we just don't know what to do or what to trust. So of course he breaks out, and the breakout scene was incredible. I was like clapping with delight. He uses all of his cool Clayface powers, and he does it in a really scary way. So it's going to ring well for people who watch this new horror movie version, but it's just like inventive. It's fun. He wasn't being Mr. Fantastic. He wasn't being Metamorpho. He was being Clayface, and it was very satisfying. I really enjoyed the heck out of it. So then he like melts, he goes into the sewers, and when he comes out of the sewers and he like picks up a newspaper, he sees that the version of him that he thinks he is, which has always been in Batman continuity a failed movie star, is out there being a movie star again. He's basically committed all these crimes, but he's been redeemed, and Hollywood loves a redemption story. So we see him in Hollywood, but he's being cruel and evil even within Hollywood as well. So is he the real him, or is he a different Clayface being him? Has Clayface been split in half? We don't know. I absolutely love this art from Fran Galan. The only thing I can compare it to is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because here, as opposed to the Mask comic, where everything was very lined and the characters really stood out. I mean, this has lines on it because the Clayface does not. So there's sort of this very like liquid quality to it that I really enjoy. It reminded me of who does the Supernaturals. Is it Dan Brereton? Yeah, it reminded me a lot of Dan Burton's art, which I think would be like a really cool artist to do covers or be on Clayface. I just absolutely love this. It's only in issue 1, so who knows if it's going to be good in the long run, but really, really cool. And I really liked it. So it was almost a 9 out of 10 for me. I just think that maybe if it was a little bit longer and we had a little bit more time with Clayface, it would have been a 9 out of 10 for me. But for a first issue, this was an 8 out of 10. I totally, totally loved it. It was totally, totally rocking. I really, really enjoyed it. So, no damage. I still have 10 points. Al's in the Barn is here to let me know that the retcon that we talked about in Firestorm is actually a very Illuminati kind of retcon. Superjob says, I like that this is good. Clayface is not a guaranteed hit. Yeah, I would recommend this. I mean, it's always hard to know the number 1, because especially DC, they do very well at number 1s lately. So it's really, really hard to know if the number 1 is going to go anywhere, but I really liked it. Like, I really was debating, is it a 9 out of 10? And I was like, am I just saying that because I want the points? And I was like, 8 out of 10 feels fair. So now I'm high on life at this point. I have 3 more books and I have 10 health. That means even if all 3 of those books were a 5 out of 10 each, I would still survive this round. So I took a risk on Operation Iron Coffin. I didn't need to do this because I already had a number 1 in this round, but I do have to get to other publishers, and I like vampire nonsense. So I was like, I'm going to do it. It's written by Kenny Porter, who I don't have strong positives or negatives about, and the art is kind of like a little angular, cartoony, so I really didn't know how it was going to ring, but I was like, you know what? There's never a bad option for me to pick vampires. There's always money in vampires, okay? Northlake Ghost, by the way, before we continue, says, I definitely thought Clayface 1 was very promising. My only beef is the pseudo splash page where he emerges and sees the billboard was underwhelming, but overall the book is looking rad. So we start this book. We're in World War II. We're in Nazi Germany. Well, we're actually might be over Poland. And we see this plane coming in, and there's a coffin in the plane. And we zoom into the coffin and we see Dracula. I mean, it's obviously Dracula. And it drops the coffin. I'm immediately hooked. Like, I love revisionist supernatural World War history. I love Dracula. I'm like, please be good. Please be good. Dracula's coffin drops through the roof of this train, and I thought the whole comic was going to be this very understated kind of color palette. No, man, we go fucking neon as soon as he goes through. Dracula bursts out of his coffin. You'll see the coffin just crushed all of these Nazi soldiers underneath of it. Look at his giant fucking claws. Look at his, like, this pink smoke coming up from underneath. Oh, I was like, yes, I picked a good one. So he's in, and he says, I hear you, Captain. I've landed. Though you must have missed the target. I'm in the back of the train. And now he's got to fight his way to the front of the train to do what? I don't know. When I tell you, my pulse was pumping at this point. I was like, oh, hell yes. So this is written by Kenny Porter, art and colors by Terrell Cannon, letters by Sean Lee, all of it clicking. So we get him starting to move throughout the train and encounter all of these SS troops. And the thing that I love about it is I love how kind of stretched out he is, because then look at that version at the bottom of the page. It allows him to be kind of like big and have these big claws and kind of swoop around, but it also makes him like very suave. And the cool thing about this is that he made Dracula really, really cool. Not just because he was killing Nazis, but because he was like slick, romantic. And I think a lot of versions of Dracula focus so much on the Vlad the Impaler kind of aspect of Dracula that they forget the romantic aspect of Bram Stoker's Dracula, or they go too romantic. He should be scary and sexy, and he's absolutely scary and sexy to me here. But the thing that really hooked me was the reason he's on this mission. Oh no, did I not put in a third? Oh no, that was the third page. The reason I really like this is because why he's on his mission, because Dracula was dead, right? This does continue directly from the end of Bram Stoker's Dracula. So it gives us some reasoning for why he's alive. So think, what would an undead creature like Dracula, who did so much bad in the world, what would happen to them when they die? Do they have a soul? Is there an afterlife? Well, I won't spoil it for you, but this Dracula encountered the answer to that question, and boy, it didn't go well for him. And so he's been returned to Earth for a mission that hopefully will mean that his eternal life, or his eternal in death, as the case may be, might not be eternal suffering. I love this book. Honestly, for me, I almost had to wonder, is it a 5? Like, it was so good, and I was so into it. So I started out with 10 health. I decided this was 8 out of 10. There were a couple of art moments I didn't super love, The action, I don't mind bloody cartoony action. It did get a little blood cartoon for me. And the antagonists vampires, like the Nazi vampires, not quite as cool as him. But there was this one scene I really loved because the Nazis, as we know from our Indiana Jones lore, had the Spear of Destiny at this point. And so there's this Nazi with the Spear of Destiny, and he's like, this gives me holy power. And it's like such a cool juxtaposition of this like Nazi priest versus like Dracula, who is just evil by definition. Very, very cool. No damage taken. 10 points still. I'm like, yes, this concept is working. I'm picking good comic books. So then we got to Die. So this was kind of like in my pocket because I know I love Kieran Gillen, I know I love Stephanie Hans, and I know I love Clayton Cowles. The first series of Die is one of my favorite series. I'm a role-playing game nut. Fiend. I loved everything about it. It was a little slow in the middle, but Gillen sometimes crawls up his own butt a little bit in terms of thematic stuff. So I was pretty confident when I picked this. Honestly, I probably could have saved it for a future round. But you know what? I was like, let's just keep this rolling. Maybe it'll even be like a 4.5 or a 5. My health will go up. So this second series of Die, if you've never read Die before, you could just start here. And actually, it's really easy to start here, especially if you don't know RPGs already, because this is almost formulated as like a friendlier intro. But the idea is that these RPG players go to play a game with each other in the first series, and when they touch their dice, they're transported into another world, and they're stuck there. And it's an RPG world with a twist. And they're stuck there originally as teenagers, and then at the beginning of that first volume, they go back as adults. And they're very surprised to be back, and they don't want to be back, but it reveals some things about them, and they have to fight their way out over the course of 20 issues. So now we're back with Die loaded, and we're back in that world, but not with all of the same cast. And I don't want to totally spoil it for you if you haven't read it, but some of the people will be familiar, and some of them won't. And the first 6 issues of this are marvelous. Every issue introduces one of the 6 cast members as they are existing in this world. And immediately the thing that I love is that Gillen is leaning into a lot of the themes about queerness and about gender, but also about generational differences and aging that he didn't always have time to do in the first one, because the first one had to introduce a whole world. This time we know what the world is, and so I just felt like there's so much more about that, and it was something that really resonated with me in the first one, so I liked it here. But this is the first issue of the second arc, and the first arc ends with a huge shock. Big shock. My jaw was on the ground when I got to the end of the first issue. So we're coming off of a big shock. We're in the back half of the series now because it's going to be 12 issues long. I was expecting a lot. It's gorgeous. Stephanie Hans has really leveled up in art and her sequential storytelling. Some of her figure work is incredible. And there's a really interesting dilemma here because the player characters can use their powers against each other, but these people are not as experienced as RPG players as the people the first time around, the ones who we haven't met before, so they don't really understand. It's like the difference between somebody who's like a min-maxer in any kind of game, an RPG, a video game, who's like, I do this and then this move stacks with this and blah, blah, blah. Like, do you ever watch people at a professional level play Magic the Gathering? It's wild. But these are not those people. So they're just figuring it out as they go, even though if you've read the first series, we as the reader know what all of their stuff does. Unfortunately, Gillen just totally drops the plot. Like, he decides that they need this gold. It's called fair gold, and you need it in this universe for a reason. And they're going to go and get it by participating in a costume contest, but it's not clear who everybody even is or what the rules are. And then the person wins that was always going to win. It just felt like it stalled. And we didn't get further into the Die world. We didn't explore it any further. We didn't learn anything. It wasn't even really a character study because we had already studied this character in the previous issue. So I felt really bummed because I was like, I've been loving this series, but this is the thing that Gillen does. And here's what I'll say about Gillen. So often my problems with a comic book is that it introduces a big idea, like that Dracula book, right? And then, or even the Seven Wives book. It introduces a cool idea, but then it doesn't have anywhere to take the idea. So in my head, I'm like, oh, there's so many better things we could have done with this. This could have been so much more interesting. And the version of it that's in my head is like more interesting than the version that we're getting on the page. And then I start to tune out. And that's not just me with books, that's me with albums, that's me with movies. It's not that I want them to all conform to my version of what I want. It's that I just see so much potential. And when the potential isn't realized, I'm kind of like, well, what are we doing here? Gillen is the opposite. Gillen's book has so much potential, and he explores potential you didn't even realize there were to explore. He explores side stories and side characters and other themes, and it's just so deep and so much that I love it. But in this case, he took me a little too far afield. I still don't hate it. It was a 6 out of 10 for me, but it just wasn't. I mean, all of the previous issues for me were like 5, 4.55, or I'm sorry, I'm talking in my 5 stars. 9, 10, 9, 10. And this one kind of was just like, if it wasn't Die, it probably would have been even lower. It probably would have been a 4 out of 10. But Die just holds a certain amount of base level appeal for me. So it's a 6 out of 10. I took 2 damage, but I'm through 4 books in this round and I have 8 health remaining. That means the final book can't kill me, because even if I gave it a 1 star out of 10, it would only do 7 damage. So I'm going to make it out of this round. Okay. Super job teasing me, saying Krisis liked a Gillen book, news at 11, because I do always like a Gillen book. Sorry, I keep losing my mouse because my screen is in a strange arrangement compared to, I don't know where it is. All right, let's continue. So I had to pick one other book, and I could have picked from another publisher or Marvel. So I thought, well, if there's one safe book at Marvel, it's going to be Jeff, because it's by Kelly Thompson. And I saw the Good Hero cover, not seeing that it was somebody different on the inside. So this is not, oh, I do need my mouse though. Hold on, where is it? Here it is here. How do we get it off of that? Oh, I know. It goes up. No, it goes up. I don't know. There it is. Okay. And so I was like, this is probably going to be reliable, right? So this artist is Toki Tokuro, with colors from Jim Campbell and letters by Joe Caramagna. Now, Jeff doesn't always have a huge narrative behind him, but when Kelly Thompson helms a full issue of Jeff, usually it is super, super fun. Her one-shot of Jeff Venomore was like one of my favorite issues of that whole year. So I was like, I'm pretty safe here. So the first problem we hit is that it features Mojo. Now, I can enjoy Mojo, but he's got to be used in the most batshit crazy way that's commenting on media. If it's just like, if it's just like silly Mojo, I get tired real fast. And this Mojo is off model. I understand it's because we're looking at his face right on, and so you can't get the pointiness of the face, but it's every look at him we get looks wrong. And it's starting out on Mojo World with like, they're conceptualizing all these new teams they could introduce, which is like a haha funny, what could Marvel do? And each of the teams have Jeff because Jeff is popular, but like the joke doesn't really land because Jeff is he that popular? Like, I feel like you needed more of a Marvel Rivals joke to make the Jeff, it just didn't land. Like, I was reading these pages and I was like, what are we doing? And I was like, oh, it's a joke about putting Jeff on every team. And the art was swung so far. Like, we would get these really cool figures, and then some of the art wasn't good. But then finally we get to the real world. So that wasn't really Jeff on that page. That was like imitation Mojoverse Jeff. So now we get a Jeff that's very unmodel. It's very good hero. It's very, very cute. He's just sitting on the couch. He's stuck inside with his little octopus buddy as everybody lines up and does a big, big fight. Then there's a big, big fight. And then we get this really lovely page. Look at this version of Spiral, who I love, one of my favorite characters, who comes to nab Jeff and pull Jeff away to Mojo World. Look at like how cool she looks. She kind of looks like she was like torn off of the cover of a manga. But there was really nothing to this book. Like, the Mojo stuff wasn't funny. Not just because it wasn't funny at all, but like it never established the joke enough that it wanted to land. And then there was like so much Jeff stuff that you could just scroll through because Jeff doesn't talk, and it was kind of just all things happening off screen, like on this page that we're supposed to smirk at. And then Spiral comes and gets Jeff. There just wasn't really a land shake. Okay, there's typos. But the great thing is I can fix those. I can fix it because that is the way that I set this up. By the way, the whole point of this was supposed to be that it was easier than the old Polish show. I don't know that this is easier than the old Polish show. I don't know, because it's a lot of infrastructure and it's a lot of stars that I have to drag around. It's a lot of math, so I don't know if it's any easier, but it certainly didn't take 10 hours to read it all, so it was a little easier that way. So I started this out with 8 health, right? I still had 8, yeah? 8, yeah. I still had 8 health. I gave this only a 5 out of 10. It was fine, but I've seen cuter, funnier Jeff comic books. And just what Wiccan is saying, just didn't have enough story. Yeah. And so I took 3 damage because I was 3 below 8. But that means I make it out this round with 5 health. I gained net health from last round, so that is incredible. Is the Mojo hate because a lot of his early appearances are drawn by Art Adams? No, for me it's like, it feels very inside baseball. It feels like a lot of comic book writers are using him to joke about editors at comic books, when really the funny thing he is it's a joke about media literacy and the lack of media literacy. And because we're in a dystopia right now, we're living in dystopia, and it's a dystopia predicted by Mojo World where everybody is just on their screens looking for entertainment. Hello, we're doing it right now. It's like, it feels like you have to use Mojo to comment on that. And if you just go back to like, oh, Mojo's making a team, it's an X-Men team, it's got X-Babies, it's kind of like that was never the fun part of Mojo. The fun part of Mojo was predicting the hegemonic power of media. And the people who used him really, really well, and Nascenti, one of them, understood that. And I just think when people just randomly bring him back, and they made one time somebody used him as like an incel, that didn't really work. One time, you know, when it's got to be heavy hitting commentary about the media landscape for Mojo to work for me. So we did make it, and a lot of people don't like him. It's not just me. We made it to level 3. So in level 3, I get 8 fresh health. Again, it goes down 2 every level. First level 12, second level 10, third level 8. I didn't really know how that was going to work, so there might be tuning in the future. So the standard rules are the same as level 2. I have to include at least number 1, and I need 1 each of Marvel, DC. Oh, and actually, only 2 other publishers, because a lot of times Image doesn't have a really deep pull list, so I kind of get 1 free play here, and I could use Image as one of my other publishers. And the bonus rule, which was chosen randomly by Samantha, oh my gosh, Samantha, it has to actually include 2 Image books. So me being let off the hook on Image books was quickly reversed, because the random rule in this was that I had to include 2 Image books, but I'm starting with 5 plus 8 health, which means 13 health. So let's see what I did with all of that health. Picked a Mark Millar book. And here's why. I figured out all of the other books that I would read in this round, and I needed 2 Image books and a Marvel and a DC. So I looked at all of the indies, and I saw women on the cover. It was a space thing. Even though it was Mark Millar, I do sometimes like Mark Millar when he's in funny mode. So I thought maybe it would work. Here's the thing. Nothing about this book, not the cover, not the solicit, tells you that it is 2 other Mark Millar properties, and it's a sequel to them both. Star Bandits and Sharky the Bounty Hunter, neither of which I liked. So I was immediately fucked, because I didn't even realize until we were on the last panel of the issue, and I was like, God damn it, I wouldn't have read this if you had marketed it that way. The other thing is, again, this artist felt like he was only good at drawing this one character, the black character. Every image of her was incredible, and every image of everything else in the comic book was weird and gawky. So I kind of was like, well, good thing she's our perspective character. The artist, by the way, is Corrado Mastantuono, with colors both from Corrado Mastantuono and Niso Mastantuono, and letters by Clem Robbins. So this was already pissing me off. And then supposedly these 2 people are these cool bandits that stole all this stuff, but we don't get anything from that. They've already done the heist, which I guess if you've read the first series that this doesn't even refer to, you might know. And so they're basically just sitting around and going to parties, which I think there is a potential interesting story to be told, with the idea of this is kind of like mercenaries who are out to pasture. These are mercenaries who have their big score. But this doesn't really put any definition around that. It doesn't really put any definition around, I'm so bored, all we do is go to parties now, or I love parties. This is all, it just doesn't give us that at all. So these characters are complete ciphers. And then they go to this party, and the whole point of the party is, I guess, to establish that we're in a world that includes Earth, but they're from like further out. So they have like 80s fashions, but everybody here is up to Earth stuff from like the 2000s. But Mark Millar doesn't really do anything with that for the characters. It's just these jokes. They're like, oh man, like, I don't remember the exact thing, but it's like, do you guys like Michael Jackson? They're like, no, Michael Jackson's old. Don't you guys watch Friends? Like, it was almost a joke about American media and the hegemonic power of American media, but it didn't, I mean, it was a joke, but it didn't tell us anything about the characters. Like, they can't help that they only know stuff from the 80s, and it doesn't even tell us anything about them that they know stuff from the 80s other than how they're dressed, which we can already see. So I just didn't, this whole comic, there was no point. Like, they stole something and we didn't get to see them steal it. They're living the high life and we don't get to see them live the high life. They have no character whatsoever, and people are hunting for them. Good. I hope they catch them and they fucking kill them, because this comic was stupid. I started this round with 13 health, and I gave this 3 out of 10 stars, which I think is generous. It was a failure. Mark Millar, as a writer who's been around for decades now, should be capable of better than this, and this artist needed better character models, because he was only drawing one character well through the entire issue, and when she falls unconscious at one point, we're stuck with the other character, we're just fucked. So This got 3 stars, which means I took an astounding 5 damage, wiping out all of the benefit that I carried through from my past round, and I had 8 health left. Shows me for picking a Mark Millar book. Plus, I think maybe I needed a number 1. No, there was another number 1. I don't know. I did it to myself. So then I had to pick a Marvel book because of the rules of this round. Needing to pick 2 Image books didn't preclude me from picking a Marvel book. I only had 4 enforced picks. So, like, Image didn't... I guess I could have replaced Marvel. No, because 2 other publishers and a free play. So one of the other publishers was Image, and then the free play was Image. Yeah, so I had to pick a Marvel book. So I looked at all the terrible Marvel books that Terrible Marvel puts out every terrible week. And I was like, well, Taskmaster's on the cover. So he fights Taskmaster. Here's the positive thing that I can say about this comic book is that I think we have discovered a true superstar from the art of Julius Ota. He was pretty good on Iron Man last year, but colored here by Jesus Bertov, I mean, he looks incredible. This is superstar level. His characters are so big. There's so much like shading and detailing on them. The action is kinetic. It's easy to follow. I had trouble following his art. Sometimes in Iron Man, I think that was a writer problem because I think the art is incredible here. The unfortunate part of this is that Taskmaster is just being used as a walking MacGuffin. We needed some character who, if they got Wolverine's healing powers, would be menacing, and so we gave them to Taskmaster. Like, it could have been anybody, but it's funnier if it's Taskmaster because he knows how to use Wolverine's claws too. There really just wasn't... It wasn't the version of Taskmaster that's cool. Like, I don't like when he's just used as a random villain to just, like, kick around. He is interesting. You can do interesting things with this. And so the problem, as is being pointed out by Superchop, is the writing by Saladin Ahmed. Now, I've read some good comic books for Saladin Ahmed. That has not been recently, and I do not think he's good at Marvel ongoings. And I will say he's a good voice for Wolverine. But this plot... And he uses Celia Rise, who I likes, but the Taskmaster's all wrong. And the plot is that there's tiny, nano-sized teleporting somethings in Wolverine's body, teleporting his mutant healing factor out of his body and into other people's bodies, including Taskmaster. That's the dumbest piece of shit, bullshit, awful fucking garbage story idea I've heard in my entire life. It's terrible. Even the worst Larry Hama Wolverine comic book would never be this bad. By the way, letters by Corey Petit. I'm totally pulled out of it at this point because it's so horrible, but the art was so good. But the way we got to this page is Wolverine's like, I gotta track the source of the things teleporting my blood out of my body that's making me have adamantium poisoning because I can't make new healing factor blood fast enough. So he goes and tracks down this guy, and this guy's like, my wife had cancer, and that's why I did it, and that's why we stole your blood. I cannot express to you how bad the script is. It's so bad. I don't even know what to say. How did an editor approve this? How did this get made into a comic book? I don't know. And yet I gave it 2.5 out of 5 or 5 out of 10. Why? Because the art was really, really good. And Saladin Ahmed's voice for Wolverine is great. But now that I'm looking at it again, I think I would revise the score down. We can't do revisionist history because I would have to remake this whole presentation. I think it was only a 4 out of 10. Honestly, now that I've talked to you about it, in the official record of this comic, I only officially give it a 4 out of 10. But at the time, I was entranced by how good the art was. So I gave it a 5 out of 10. I took 3 damage. That means I only have 5 health remaining, and we're only on the second book of this round. I'm as good as last round went. This round ain't going that well. So then I picked a DC book, and again, the pickings were a little bit slim at this point in DC. So I picked Emperor Aquaman, and I didn't catch up on it. Now, I liked this Jeremy Adams series okay when I was reading it last year. I hated the art. Well, I didn't hate it. It wasn't always for me. And this is a different artist. So I was like, well, if I'm going to make it out you know, Adams is usually pretty reliable, often gives me a 3.5 out of 5 kind of issue. I can maybe skate out of this only with 1 damage. So it's Jeremy Adams writing, it's Paolo Villanelli in art, who I really have loved. Didn't he drew something at Marvel, was it Spider-Gwen? Rex Locus on colors has been on colors this entire series, and Dave Sharp on letters. So apparently Aquaman's an emperor now. And what's really interesting about that is that he's now kind of been elevated to the place where he often deserves to be in DC, which is he is the king of all the seas. He does have powers that outstrip the powers of many of the Justice League members, and they do have reasons to be a little bit worried and concerned about him. So there's that plot happening, and there's also the plot of Mera and her 2 like backup singers who are under the ocean, just having a stroll around Aquaman's kingdom, and for some reason they just stumble onto a meeting of every Aquaman villain ever, because that's how it would go. They would just meet inside of a rock that's plainly in sight of Mera, who's on a patrol. So then, of course, Mera, or Mira, whatever the hell her name is, has to have a fight with her 2 little helper ladies, with all of them. The fight, the action is really unclear. It doesn't help that we're underwater, so there's this constant Z-axis. I really actually like a lot of the art and colors, but it just wasn't enough. This was too confusing an environment with too many characters, with too many models and too many colors and too many spaces for them to track. And the other thing is, and I do think now that I'm seeing it, this was the Spider-Gwen artist, all the faces look too young. I thought this was like the teenage version of the Justice League. Like Aquaman looks like he's 13. Barry looks super young. Wonder Woman has no definition in her face. It just, everything doesn't look stately, like it befits an emperor. So, and then this issue ended, and I'm like, well, what happened? Mera just wanders into this fight just because it needed to happen for plot reasons, and it's really hard to follow, and she gets captured, because always she gets captured, and then one person makes it out, but then she rescues her, but then I'm just like, this is Emperor Aquaman? Like, this is you gave this book a new title to tell this story? So I came into this with 5 health. I gave this a 6 out of 10. Again, maybe I was being generous. I don't know. I was being generous. I think at this point, all of these books were maybe 1 star lower than I gave them, but no, we can't even say that it was written well. So I probably would have written. See, this is why I don't usually bring scores to pull lists in the past. And that's one of the dangers of this format. Because I do haggle back and forth in stores. A lot of times I'll like read my whole week and then I'll go back and like adjust the scores to be like, oh, that wasn't as good as I thought it was. But for the purpose of this, when I read it and I made the presentation, it was 6 out of 10. So I took 2 more damage and I have 3 health. Now that means if the next book is a 3 or 3.5, I get to go to the next round. But if it's a 2.5 or lower, I do not. So I said, well, I did need 2 image books in this round. Actually, I have 2 more books that have to be the high. So actually, I'm in a lot of danger. But I did, and they both had to be image books. I used all of my non-image books for this round because I did this Mark Miller book, I did a Marvel, and I did a DC. So I looked at image and I said, well, Larry Hama G.I. Joe is never terrible. So maybe I can get out of this with like a 3 or a 3.5. It's rarely ever a 4 for me, but I'm going to go for it. Now, this is G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, which is the main G.I. Joe continuity that's always been around forever. It is not the Energon Universe continuity. So this is Larry Hama writing, pencils by Paul Paoletta, inks by Tony Cordos, and colors from Francesco Segala. So I skipped a few issues to get here, but it's really easy to pick up because Larry Hama's a classic, and he kind of tells you what issue or what's been happening recently. So in this issue, apparently Snake Eyes' personality got downloaded to a couple of different, or his memories got downloaded to a couple of different G.I. Joes, but it was a memory that had a Cobra Easter egg in it that's causing him to attack other Joes. And so we're seeing the Joes in the control center trying to communicate to the other Joes who are with the Snake Eyes personality Joes to tell them, like, watch out. I mean, it makes a very good issue. I do think that, I don't know if Paul Pelletier is the right guy to keep alternating arcs in this now that we're 3 years in. I actually really like Pelletier, and he's very Alan Davis to me, which I enjoy, but his art is looking a little bit haggard here. I mean, the detail is there, but it's just starting to look like a little tired to me. And this plot just kind of is what it is. Snake Eyes versus Scarlet is very, very fun because Scarlet is a cool character too, and she's really good at, fighting it off. They have and then we kind of see Snake Eyes like working to overcome this mind control. It's a fun adventure. I mean, there's literally nothing wrong with it. But a fun adventure, unfortunately, is only a 6 out of 10. Now, this also further convinces me that that Aquaman issue was worse, but the ship has already sailed, as they say. So I had 3 health going into this, and I gave this a 6 out of 10. So I took 2 more damage, leaving me with 1 health left. Wiccan, it's not really legacy numbering so much as it has been around for that long. There was the original 155 Marvel issues that were in the first Kickstarter. Then there were almost 150 issues at IDW, which was the second Kickstarter. And then Skybound started from issue 300, and it's been 2.5 years. So we're now at 330. Yeah, so it's all organic issues. I don't think there's any renumber. I think it's all been sequential issues of that run. I have 1 health left. So I actually had been saving this because I really like James Tynion comic books, but he did not write this. But as part of Exquisite Corpses, do not spoil Exquisite Corpses for me. I'm only on issue 4, but this is the backstory of one of their, their villainous characters, Rascal Randy. So I thought, okay, there's a good chance that maybe I could give this a 4 out of 5. None of the other Image books, again, other than The Forged, which I don't want to rush and I'm busy catching up on, I thought maybe it would be good enough. This issue sucked. I don't understand why we are getting to know this killer. The art was terrible. I hated it. And this is an artist that I actually have loved in the past. Dylan Burnett, I think, didn't he do something with Donny Cates? Maybe Baby Teeth? I could be making that up. Colors by Jordi Belair, letters by Becca Carey, who I always really enjoy, written by Tyler Boss, who's usually pretty reliable. But it does this thing, and this thing turns me against any comic book ever. And I know it's a stylistic choice, I just hate it. Where in order to show the reflection of light on glasses, they only show one eye or one pupil, and then they black out the other one. As soon as I see that, I've deducted 3 points from your book. I hate it. I think it's stupid. That's not how glasses work in real life. It's lazy. I despise it. Just a tick of art that bothers me. Also, we're like in this small town, so of course they're beating up this nerd kid, and this nerd kid loves the mascot that's the killer. It's just like such a huge, what the fuck do I care about? Like, we get to the end and then there's a killer and he's killing the bullies. I hope he kills everybody. So the problem that I always have in horror books and genre books and crime books is like, who am I rooting for? Because if you think of all your favorite horror movies, there's somebody to root for. It's either the killer or it's the protagonist or the final girl or whoever, right? And so if all the people are assholes, then sometimes it's fun to root for the killer, but the killer has to be somebody cool. But if the killer's not cool, or if it's too scary or too inhuman and you can't really root for the killer, then you have to root for the people. And some horror things do both, right? Aliens. Sometimes you're wishing for some of the people to get killed by the aliens. Sometimes you want them all to survive. In this book, I hated everybody. I was looking forward to them all getting killed, except for this kid's cool aunt, but I wanted her to get killed just so I wouldn't have to look at him anymore because he's drawn so bad. And then the killer kills this bad guy, but like, what's the point? And I understand that the point is like, if we've read Exquisite Corpses, maybe we have some affinity for this mass murder, but your book needs a point. Why did you make a comic book if there was no point? I don't understand. So unfortunately, this book was only a 4 out of 10 for me. I thought it was really bad. I don't think it should have been made. Honestly, I might go back and take another star off of this one too. So I only started out with 1 health. This needed to be a 4 in order for me to survive, and I did not survive. Game over. Krisis did not survive the experience. So that is my experimental version of pull list survivor mode. I don't know that I would do it every week, but the great thing about it is I don't have to do it every week. It could be a week that I don't have another show. It could be a second show of the week, especially because, as you can see, this is a pretty quick show compared to the old one, which was like a marathon, like 4 or 5 hours. But there is a chance that if I had survived the round, we could have kept reading more rounds. And so I did have other things picked for the other rounds. I think if I went to the next round, I was going to read... so my next round, I should have put these on the screen. The next round, round 4, has 2 random requirements, which were picked by near mint condition people. One of them was I had to include a book I've dropped or avoided. So that was going to be Uncanny X-Men. And I had to include my bottom pick from my pull list. So like, what book was I the least interested to read? And that was Aladdin #1 from Dynamite. So that would have been the challenges for that. I doubt I would have made it out of that alive, especially reading Uncanny X-Men. And then round 5 would be the final round, and there are no rules and no bonus rules in round 5. I just have to try to survive with whatever remaining health I have left if I make it that far, but there was no round 5, which means the most books I would ever read for the show is 25 issues, which feels very doable. 25 issues, even if they average out with all the doing in the administrative to 10 minutes each, is only 250 minutes. It's only, 4 hours and some change of reading, and then putting the presentation together. So that is my new idea for pull list survivor mode. And I see so much potential for this, potentially, if we were to keep doing it, because what if I gave you a home version? What if you all picked one of the books I had to read in the first round? What if I made it to the end of round 5, something special happened? What if we got a bonus show? What if I read something special? What would happen? What if you guys could like throw shells and bananas onto the course? What happens if you guys like vote as the chat? But again, I'm not reading live, so you can't control the experience that much live, but you can control the experience of the next week, right? So like in my mind, the thing about me is that I used to think up these things and then I would just put them in the back burner and never do them. I have so many podcasts I wanted to do, so many projects, so many books I wanted to write, so many CK projects. What I love about this Sunday show that we've been doing all together is that me and you giving me the opportunity to like do things quickly and innovate and try them and see how it goes. And if it goes badly, well, then we're not going to do it again. So that's really, really working for me. And so I love the chance to do it. I could see a future version of this where like, I lock in my list ahead of time, or I tell you what the list is over the weekend so you can read the things that are on my list, or I put up a poll and you get to choose things for one of the rounds, or I give the spreadsheet to everybody and everybody plays and then everybody tells how far they got. Or, and I see a version of this where I commission people to do custom pixel art of me and custom little hearts and like, the custom like dead emoji of Krisis. Like there's so many things that I could do with it. And I think it would be a really fun way to do pull list. That the other thing is I never want to come on this channel and do something somebody else is doing. And I already think doing the pull list the way that I used to do it is something nobody's doing. Nobody reads as much as me. Nobody does. Or at least they don't talk about it to the depth that I do. But that's a crazy amount of work. And I think if I have 10 hours plus the prep work plus the show, which comes out to over 15 hours a week to spend on Crushing Krisis, I think there's other things I could do to benefit me, to benefit you, to benefit the webpage. So I don't necessarily want to go back and do pull list the old way. So if pull list were to come back, do you like the idea of doing it this way? Are there things you would want to see more this way? Is this a good idea, bad idea? Do you like the gamification? Should it be gamified more? I'm interested in all of that feedback. If you watch this after the fact, please leave me a comment below. For people who are watching live, we're about to head to our after party, and it's a nice early after party, which I love. In the after party, not only can everybody Q&A me about as much as they want to Q&A about, but I might reveal some of the shows that are coming up in future weeks. So that could be really fun too. We're not going back to pull list on Sundays. This is not going to be the show next Sunday. This is a one-off experiment so I could get some live feedback from you all. So if you are going to see me in a minute or next week or whenever, please in the intervening time, let's remember to go out in this world and give care and respect to everybody. I know I say this every week, but we cannot accept oppression of people just because they're different. We can't accept oppression. Okay? People having an opinion about something does not allow them to give them the right to oppress anybody. Opinions include religion. You can believe in religion or not, that does not give you the right to oppress anybody. That is not how it works, okay? So let's go out into the world and not just look for ourselves not to be oppressed, but to defend our trans siblings from oppression, to defend our siblings of color from oppression, to defend our women siblings from oppression, to defend our gay siblings from oppression, to defend people who are the victims of genocide right now from oppression. If we're not doing that, are we superheroes? I don't think so. So that is my message to you. And even if you do something in some small way, you make one donation, you say one kind thing to one person, you come to the defense of one person when somebody else is talking shit about that person. That's all I'm looking for here. Small change in the world. None of us are the president of a country, but we all can change the world around us. So until I see you again, please don't have a crisis. Unless, of course, it's me. I missed the button.